Have you ever wondered, what the hell is Las Plagas? Where did it start? What even is it? Well, if you have, I'm Spencer and I'm here to explain that to you. So, do I have qualifications for this? I've taken biological anthropology classes, I'm interested in paleoanthropology and similar things. Plus, I am just a very nerdy college student who wants to do a deep dive into stuff they find interesting. So, let's start at the very beginning. The Plagas may have originated from West Africa, which we learn in Resident Evil 5, and it is thought to have evolved, last been seen in the Neolithic age, which is 10 to 3,000 years ago. The remains found, they were fossilized remains, I believe, were found in the Indipaya kingdom, but the Spanish Las Plagas population, which is featured in Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 4 Remake, are believed to have gotten there around the Bronze Age, which is 3300 to 1200 BC. It's not said how many years ago, but Count Gregorio Salazar waged a crusade against the pagan believers who worshipped the Las Plagas. He waged a crusade against them and sealed all of the Plagas underneath this mound. And on top of that mound, he built a fortress, which is where we meet and fight Ramon Salazar in both 4 and 4 Remake. He dedicated the rest of his lineage to be Castellans, to guard and make sure that Las Plagas does not get out again. However, Osmond Sadler, who was a descendant of some of the people who survived the crusade, managed to find some remains of Las Plagas and realized it was buried under a mound. So he created this cult and bioterror organization known as Los Iluminados, which means the Enlightened Ones. And he became the head of the cult as well as the prophet of the cult, and convinced Ramon Salazar, the current Castellan, to release the Plagas. So, all of the Plagas that were in the mound had died, probably of starvation or something similar, because as it is a parasite, it cannot survive without a host. So, they were excavating the mummified remains of the Plagas, and it was learned after workers started experiencing symptoms that the Plagas had survived in spore form, which, not very realistic, but then again, this is a video game. So, according to reports written in-game by Los Iluminados researchers, there are 2 different types of Plagas. One is artificially made, and one is natural. The natural one is what we will be focusing on because that is what is used in 4 and 4 Remake. The Plagas can reproduce asexually, meaning it just lays eggs. The eggs get eaten by animals or injected, as we can see with Leon, Ashley, and I'm assuming also Luis. Gets implanted. The eggs hatch, and as they grow, they attach to your nervous system. Meaning, in the game, we see it in the chest region, like with Luis and the scar on his chest, and Leon and Ashley, where we see the X-ray. I would think that attaching to the nervous system would mean somewhere back here on your spinal cord or on your brainstem, but that's just me. So it attaches to the spinal cord and exerts a certain amount of control over the host, but it cannot fully control the host unless the brain is compromised or destroyed. So that means a headshot, breaking the neck, anything that severs the brainstem and stops brain activity will allow the Plagas to completely control the host. So that leads to a specific enemy known as the, hold on, I have it here. Desnucado. The Desnucado is a enemy that is specific to the remake, as that's when Leon kicks and breaks the neck, and then the Plagas sprouts from the neck. That enemy is not in the original. So Desnucado means broken neck, and that is an enemy that is specific to the remake, but also shows how the Plagas can exhibit control once the brain activity is done. So there are 3 forms of ganado, 4 if you want to count the Desnucado, but I'm putting that as its own thing. There are 3 forms of ganado, 3 forms of Las Plagas. We have the Guadaña, which is Spanish for scythe. That is the enemy that sprouts up and it has the eye, and then once you do something to it, it starts with like this bone scythe thing that can whoosh and hit Leon. That is the first form. Mandibula is the second stage of the Plagas life form, second stage of ganado. It the tentacles of the Guadaña have hardened. It's the one that has the mouth that can grab Leon and just eat him whole. It can create limbs, it can grab the attacker and pull it towards its mouth. And it's also capable of spitting acid at the attacker, mainly Leon. There's a third life form known as the araña, which is Spanish for spider, which is very accurate. The araña can separate itself from the host. We see this later in the game, where it's kind of clinging to the back and piloting the ganado. Though it can separate itself from the host, it cannot survive for long like that. It is much weaker in this form. The labs of Los Lumanados has done a lot of experimentation on this, on the Las Plagas. So through the experimentation, it is shown that under certain conditions, the Plagas can mutate humans, animals, animal-human hybrids, and can cause increased strength, abnormal proportions, and regeneration. There are a lot of enemies that show this, like the Iron Maidens and the Regeneradors, which means regeneration. They are hosts to Las Plagas, as they have multiple Plagas throughout their body. And you have to find these Plagas in the body to kill it, otherwise it can just keep regenerating, showing the regeneration abilities of the Plagas. They were once human, but they've mutated, they've gone gray, and they have this terrifying breathing noise. I hate it. And the Iron Maidens can produce spikes from their bodies. I don't know if those spikes are bone, if there's something else. I would assume that it's bone, because there are animals on Earth, notably the wolverine frog, that can break its bones and attack with them as claws. So a real life thing that relates to the game. There's also El Gigante, which is the giant. It was definitely once human, as we see in one of the notes. It just keeps growing and growing and growing and eating and eating and eating. It's human, but with the implantation of Las Plagas on its back, he becomes a giant with increased strength. He doesn't really have regeneration abilities, none that I've noticed while playing throughout the games. Same with the El Gigante-esque characters in Resident Evil 6. They don't have regeneration abilities, but they do have abnormal proportions, and they are incredibly strong. Another creature with increased strength and size is Del Lago, which is a salamander that they implanted with Las Plagas that now roams the lake near the village, eating boats, eating the police officers. Del Lago gets up to 65 feet in length, which is absolutely ginormous. Another terrifying enemy that has Las Plagas in it is the Garadors. Garadors are still human. They still look remarkably human, with Plagas placed in their back, with increased aggression, which we can note in the Ganados. Increased aggression is one of the things that happens when you implant someone with Las Plagas. They get increased aggression, and they form social groups to stick together, no outsiders. So the Garadors have Plagas placed in their back, but they have their eyes and mouth sewn shut. They also have blades attached to their hands, and they will swing wildly when they hear any noise, because that's all they can do. The Armadura are groups of Plagas, which also shows that even Plagas not in a host form social groups. So the Plagas in the Armaduras are just simply groups of Plaga living in suits of armor. They freeze when they are exposed to light and will die when exposed to blue flames. There are 2 human insect hybrids that I've noticed while researching this. There are the Verdugo and the Novistadors. The Verdugo are humanoid in shape with black skin, white faces that kind of open like the Demogorgon in Stranger Things, kind of open like that. The Verdugo served Ramon Salazar as his bodyguards. The Novistadors are definitely more insect-like, but they were human at one point. The Novistadors can go invisible. They hide in the sewers, in dark places, and I do not know what insect was used in this experiment. I just know that an insect was used. The only way to successfully remove the Plagas from someone is to expose them to intense radiation therapy. Any attempt to surgically remove the Plagas when it has reached its adult stage will end up killing the host. So that is why Luis invented the machine and removed the Plagas himself. That is how the Plagas was removed from Leon and Ashley as well. So without that, they're dead. Another enemy that I did not mention was the Colmillo, which is the wolves. They are the wolves that have Plagas implanted along their spine. They attack Leon, they attack everything. And it's just to show that not only humans, but also animals can be affected by Las Plagas as well. I think I've gone over everything in my notes. I hope that I edit this to make it seem like I know what I'm talking about, and thank you for watching. If you have any requests on any bioterrorist organizations in Resident Evil, any viruses, any parasites, anything like that you want me to talk about, please feel free to leave a comment and I will get to it. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.